because otherwise I will forget. Anyway, welcome. We are here with Heather, and she is talking about Better Together, Pardot and Salesforce automations for marketing and sales team success. And I have to say, I'm very excited about this session. This is very empowering, I think. So, with no further ado, I'm going to mute myself, take myself off the screen, and let you get going.
Great, thank you. Yes, so we're going to talk a little bit about Pardot and Salesforce and how we can use their automation capabilities for sales and marketing teams, and how we can improve their processes. So a little bit about me. I'm Heather Rinke. I'm on the team at Rinke. We're a Salesforce partner. I've been in the ecosystem for about a little over 10 years now, but I have also before that have had different roles on in-house on both in from IT, project management, digital marketing, sales operations, and before moving into consulting. Before now, I would say earlier this year, I was living in Toronto, Canada, and I've recently moved this spring out into about a hour and a half outside of Toronto in a very rural setting, which is very lovely, and I'm loving it, but also very new experience. So I'm a pet parent. I have a dog and 2 cats, and while on the side says aspiring potter, I'm probably aspiring to be an aspiring potter. I'm very, very new to it. Took it up during COVID, and loving it. So it's definitely one of my hobbies that I'm enjoying at this point. So today we're going to take a look at. We're going to first take a quick look at Pardot, because I'm not sure, given the event, and just for everybody, just to sort of level set for everyone that's attending on Pardot and some of the capabilities, we'll take a quick look at that. We'll look at Pardot and Salesforce and what their strengths are and where they may fall short, and the other may be able to pick that up. And then I'll have some examples of some common lead to sales processes that we can automate, and then finally a few things that we might want to watch out for when we're looking at trying to marry the two with building automated solutions. Okay, so first a quick little overview on Pardot. So I'm going to use Pardot throughout this session, but really Pardot has now been rebranded Marketing Cloud Account Engagement. It's a mouthful, but what it represents is a marketing automation platform that has been positioned as a B2B marketing automation tool. So the capabilities of it are quite comprehensive. That you can do email marketing with lots of capabilities, automation capabilities, which we're going to cover off in a few moments. But you also have some personalization and capabilities, as well as qualification with scoring and grading. Really allows you to utilize it to align marketing and sales. So while it is definitely positioned as a B2B automation tool, it can be utilized to go beyond that. And I mentioned the fact that it's been rebranded, so it is, you will see the product as Marketing Cloud Account Engagement powered by Pardot, but for this session, for brevity, I'm going to just use Pardot. So we'll talk a little bit about the automation suite first, and I'm just going to do a quick overview, not really get in depth in any of these, but other than talking through examples, but we're going to just talk through the automation tools very quickly. So first you have Engagement Studio. And so this has similarities to Flow on the Salesforce side. As you can see, the layout and the structure of it is quite similar. It allows you to define certain logic based on rules or triggers. So you can trigger, you can listen for an event like an email click or a form submission. You can evaluate criteria such as a specific field value or score, and then you can do something. You can take an action, sending an email, creating a task. You can do a lot of different things with this, and the capabilities are quite strong. They have a start element that allows you to control who enters. So oftentimes you can add criteria on this. What's a capability on the Pardot side called dynamic list, which allows you to control who gets added to a list based on criteria. And
Heather, can I stop you right there? Did you mean to be sharing your screen?
oh, I apologize.
No, that's
What I
okay. I
had.
just, when you said that, I thought maybe you were.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, everyone. I thought I
There you
had
go.
clicked it.
It's up now. Great.
It's up now and it's looking very small on my screen. Do you see it? Is it full screen for you?
Um, yeah, it's mostly full screen. It's as full screen as it can get on here. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. I
Thank you.
apologize, everyone. So this is, I mean, really the slides before this were just mainly just words on the slide. So so here we have the engagement studio, and this just kind of visually gives you an idea of what engagement studio looks like. As I mentioned, very similar to Flow. You can also, in addition to the capabilities I already mentioned, you can actually control, for example, like when actions take place. So if you have an email send, you can actually control the days in which the emails can be sent. So it gives you quite a lot of capabilities. So you can add a lot of logic. As you can see in the example I have here, we have a few branches, a few decisions here, but you can actually take that to the next level and build it out so it can be huge. So Engagement Studio can support up to 300 steps. So it allows you to do a lot of cool things, but it also could be potentially mean a lot of management, and depending on what you're doing, that's good if you're managing it within Pardot, but it could be a little bit of an overload for management. Next, we have automation rules. We have automation rules are if-then logic. So you basically will evaluate the values, for example, on a prospect, and based on that, you can take an action. So, for example, the example I have here is if a prospect score is a certain value and the grade is a certain value. These are deemed, scoring and grading is used for qualification. So if based on those matches, it will take an action. So in my example, I'm marking the lead status, and then I'm assigning via the Salesforce active assignment rule. So this is something that has some pretty strong capabilities. They are retroactive, so this is something to keep in mind. Where so if you haven't this rule active, it will evaluate everybody in the database. So everybody that has those values matching, it will evaluate and take an action. So for example, if you have a rule that states if it's looking for somebody that's in the state of California and it has a title of director, do XYZ, it will take a look at everyone in the database and do that. Next, we have asset level completion actions. And so this is based on very similar to rules on the actions that we saw in the automation rules, but this is at the asset level. So available when somebody takes an action on that specific asset. So you can do it on a form or form handler where you can where if somebody fills out the form, you can take action, maybe add them to a list or send them an autoresponder. Same with email clicks or opens. So there's a lot of capabilities that you can do here. The screenshot here also shows you that you actually can add conditional actions as well. So if you have somebody that fills out a form and happens to be in a specific location, you may send them to one queue. But if they're in another location, you may send them into another queue. Page actions. So when this is again very sort of something I wanted to highlight as far as capabilities, it is a completion action that you at an asset level, but this gives you some capability on when somebody has viewed a specific a high priority web page. You may want to kick off an action like assigning a task to a sales rep, or sending a notification, maybe even bumping up a score. So there's some capabilities in there, and it's a pretty neat feature for highlighting when somebody comes to visit very high priority pages. So that's a quick overview on the main automation tools within Pardot. There's a lot of capabilities and subset nuances with them as you start using it more. What I wanted to highlight as well is what Pardot can and can't do from a data perspective with records in Salesforce. So what you have is the different types of objects on the Pardot side, and then on the right is the corresponding objects on the Salesforce side that they sync to. So for Pardot prospects, which are essentially the individuals that we're marketing to, those would sync with your leads and contacts or potentially person accounts if you're using those. There's a two-way sync between those two, but the rest, as you can see, are essentially one way. So Pardot can view accounts, can view custom objects, but can't update them. They can create tasks, but they can't read tasks. And record assignment is done for prospects, but that's only the first assignment. So if they're already assigned, Pardot can't be utilized for that. Same with opportunities, read only, or prospects within those opportunities or campaigns. You can create campaign members, but only updating the member status. There's no other capability to update fields on those campaign members. So here's where we have some where we talk a little bit about the Salesforce. I'm not going to get into Salesforce automation tools because I mean this whole event is around Salesforce and all the automation capabilities. So I'm not going to spend this time talking those. But I wanted to just highlight we do have a lot of on the Salesforce side a lot of declarative automation tools. And I've mentioned, I mean, the main one being Flow. I've mentioned some of the other ones here, and then also honorable mention to a non-declarative or code-based automation capability, which is Apex. And then the way the options are, opens options up that much more when you introduce Apex as well. So for the examples I'm going to show today, I'm going to talk about Flow, but I wanted to just highlight all the capabilities within Salesforce here. Oh, and apparently I have some automation rules here. So we'll just quickly go through those. And then where Pardot carries the day is when you need to implement a retroactive update. So I mentioned automation rules. They're a great way to do a reset if you need to do some retroactive updates. Those can be quite handy. Also, when you want to trigger an email send or a task, or sorry, email send, and you actually want to get analytics on what's happening. When you are or when you want to trigger an action based on a specific engagement from a customer or a prospect. Things that where you want to, another one I'll highlight is when you want to have maybe marketing do some automations on their own. If there's like some marketing teams that want to do some automations, and maybe on the Salesforce side, there's some additional folks that need to get involved when it comes to building automations. That's a capability. Automations can be quite handy for that purpose. So what Pardot can't automate as well is anything with math. So if we want to increment values, Pardot can do that, but anything where we want to do calculations, Pardot falls short. We want to copy, if we want to copy values from one field to another, or trigger actions based on a field change. These are things that Pardot can't do as well that we might want to rely on Salesforce. Another one I'll highlight is custom notifications. So if we want to create tasks, but we want those tasks to have custom information in them or complete custom fields on the tasks. Or if we want to send out an email alert to the Salesforce rep and that we want that email to have custom information in it. Those are things that are easy to do on the Salesforce side, but Pardot is a little bit limited in that area. The other one I'll highlight is custom objects. If we want, we can view custom objects on the Pardot side, but if we want to update them or even use them in our emails or use them in task creation or anything along that line, this is where we want to be able, we can look to Salesforce for that capability. So next I'm going to go through how they can be utilized together. So I'm going to skim through these. This is just a list of the different automations. So real life customer ask, we want to send an 8-week nurture campaign to 20,000 cold prospects. If somebody clicks through, we want our team to follow up from a Salesforce task. If they close it, great. we don't want to email them anymore. But if they don't actually respond, if we don't close that task, we want to keep emailing them. So how we do this is we can set up a campaign on the Salesforce side and with specific campaign member statuses on them. Then we can set up a dynamic list on the Pardot side that actually will look for people that have a status, that are on that campaign, that have a status of enrolled, sent, or clicked. Then we can add that lead to the to a dynamic, or add that lead to the dynamic list, and then that list would populate a engagement studio program on the Pardot side that begins sending emails to them on every 2 weeks. I'll highlight just this a little bit closer, but if they click on a link in that email, then we could be updating the status in Salesforce and creating a task for the sales rep. Then that task gets created for them, and it has a specific title to it and some comments on instructions on what they need to do. When the task gets closed, then we can trigger a flow that will take a look at that task, and it will update the lead, the status on that lead, to contacted. Because their status has been updated, they're no longer a member of the dynamic list that's used to add them to an engagement studio program. And so they get removed from the nurture program. And then they're no longer emailed. Another real life ask is we don't want our sales users to have to think about Pardot. Salesforce is hard enough. We want to trigger custom emails when a prospect fills out a form and include detailed instructions on how the sales should follow up. We also want those form details to be included in the task in the email as custom fields. So we can do this again by combining the two. So we added a custom field on the lead record called trigger task creation. We've also added a couple other fields for visibility, last form completed, last form completed date. Based on that trigger, when they complete the form, the trigger task creation field is set to true. That gets synced over to Salesforce, and it triggers a flow on the Salesforce side that creates the task. We can use the flow to customize what is included on that task, the subject, if there's custom fields that need to be filled out, if there's a custom description with form contents, all of that information can be utilized to create the task. Then we can send the alert to sales and so the task appears on the lead, the sales rep gets notified, and they get an email with that information on it. We also add a step on the flow side to remove the task trigger so that it can be reset the next time they fill the form. So if we want to take it a step further, and let's say we've added the task for sales has reached them, and they find once they talk to them, they're not ready yet, but they want to be able to send back to marketing and keep them top of mind. So how we can do this? We could potentially use a screen flow on the lead to help guide the sales rep to log what took place and what the outcomes are on their conversations with this particular lead. If they decide after talking with them that they want to send back to marketing, that can trigger a flow, which would then, based on the decision to send back to marketing, we could update the lead, whether that be the lead status or field on the lead. And then that Pardot can be listening for that, and that would trigger them, add them to a dynamic list, and add them to a top of mind nurture campaign that will continue to send them emails until they click or respond, or till they click or engage with the content that's presented to them. And then they can be, automations can be set to send them back to sales, notify them, add another task, maybe they fill out a form, and the cycle continues. So considerations to keep in mind. One is sync errors. This is a big one. So when you're updating Pardot on the Pardot side, we're syncing data then to the corresponding field in Salesforce. You want to keep in mind sync errors, like a couple of examples here are the email field length, if there's a mismatch between the two systems, duplications. You could trigger duplication rules. You could trigger validations. If there's, you could see invalid invalid pick list values if those aren't aligned. So there is the ability to be able to look at those prospect sync errors and make corrections, because error that prospect is and the updated data is not getting sent to Salesforce. So this is something that's strongly recommended to review on a regular basis, daily or at minimum weekly, to make sure that those are not adding up, because we've seen orgs with errors that have thousands of error queues or sync queues with thousands of errors in them, and that's not good, because that information is not getting through to Salesforce. We also want to look at field sync behavior. So when you're mapping a Pardot field to a Salesforce field, you can control when there's values on both sides, which wins. So if you're planning to update fields on the Pardot side and your field sync behavior is set to where Salesforce value wins, the Pardot updates are going to never push through Salesforce. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, formula fields, there's some, while they're visible in Pardot, on the Salesforce side, they do not trigger a sync back to Pardot. So that's something to keep in mind. Bad data, we talked about automation rules and the fact that if it'll look at the entire database. If somebody's in a particular state and has a particular status, you want to take an action. Well, if that value is, if that data is not accurate, you're going to take actions on those leads contacts that may not be intended. So bad data can have the consequences. States and countries, if you have enabled standardized state and country pick lists, you'll want to make sure that that is also set up, or that is the corresponding field on the Pardot side is aligned with that, or you will get errors, sync errors, if the values do not match. You could get field integrity issues. Null values are another one, where if Pardot clears a value, or Salesforce clears a value and sends it back over to Pardot, Pardot does not recognize null values. This is something that has come up actually quite recently with some of the clients that we've worked with. So this is something that you actually need to get in touch with Pardot support in order to get their help with having Pardot support that. DML limits. So if you are triggering a lot of updates, if you're importing leads into Pardot that trigger a lot of updates that are happening on the Pardot side, and that Pardot then pushes all those lead updates over, and that will trigger automations on the Salesforce side. You want to make sure that your automations are going to handle the larger volume of the updates. Otherwise, you will see errors come back in your sync error log that could reflect your DML limits. And another gotcha, not really between the two systems, is more between the two teams. So you want to make sure that your communication between marketing and sales are strong, and you've got alignment between the two teams, because if you're automating processes between these two teams, you want to make sure that everybody's aligned on what's going to happen, what the expectations are, and what the expected outcomes are. So last but not least, taking it a little bit further with code, I have a couple of examples on here. We want to automate, automate some things with a third-party platform that we want to actually to have visibility to those activities in Pardot. Or we want to trigger some capability where we want prospects to automatically be matched to account for an account-based view. So I don't have examples in this session, but a couple of my colleagues have sessions over the course of automation Dreamin. Mike Cruiser was focusing on centering on the account in Marketing Cloud account engagement. That's already happened, but I encourage you to catch the recording. And then my colleague Jacob Catalano is following up actually the next session on how you can actually bring account engagement into Flow with Flow Actions for Pardot and using some for external activities. So I would definitely encourage you to check those sessions out. And I guess at this point, we can take a look at if there are any questions, but I think we're very limited on time if my clock is correct.
We are, but we've got a few minutes, or
okay.
30 seconds, if we will, for questions.
If you're quick. Yeah.
Awesome. And you may have answered everything because that was terrific. Did you want to give your LinkedIn information or Twitter handle or anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. You can reach me on Twitter at Rinke, and then LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well, and I've also got my email address. And I did not add my speaker name and company name. So again, I'm Heather Rinke, and I'm with Circante. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, it happens to us all, especially on
Monday. Yeah.
Okay. Gang, if there are any questions, please hurry up and drop them in chat. Otherwise, I'm going to let Heather go so all of us can get to our next session. But that was awesome. I know that I've got some questions, and I'm sure that one of my teammates who's on this call probably has some questions. So thank you so much, Heather.
Yeah, feel free to reach out if anyone has any questions on how to on specific use cases. I mean, what I covered was very general, so I'm happy to talk through with you.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.